You're listening to Mystic Lounge with Alan B. Smith. Rebroadcast on the Onyx Network. Thursdays at 11 p.m. Pacific. Fridays at 2 a.m. Eastern.
However you are and whenever you are, welcome good souls to Mystic Lounge. I'm Alan B. Smith, and joining us tonight is Jennifer Mitchell. She is a practitioner of Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique who is focused on helping others reach their quote-unquote higher self. And what is the higher self? We'll ask Jennifer about that in just a moment. If you are a fan of this podcast, Mystic Lounge or Coffee and UFOs, both on the YouTube Mystic Lounge channel, please consider giving a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, liking, commenting, share your thoughts on what your spiritual practices are. And if this is a technique that you've experimented with before, I'd love to hear how many people out there are actually using it. And of course, subscribe on the YouTube channel to help support all of these podcasts and the channel grow. And now I'm going to welcome on our very special guest, Jennifer Mitchell. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Hi, Alan. I'm doing good. How are you tonight?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. QHHT is something that has come up on the program a little bit before, Quantum Healing Technique. And I think a lot of people find a approach towards therapy because they have the personal journey of their own. So before we, talk about the spiritual practice, can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and what led you to it?
Absolutely, Alan. I'd like to start by saying that, growing up, I always felt like there was something out there, that there was something more. A little bit of background about my childhood. I'll start there just a little. My mom was very much into ufology. Some of my earliest memories are going to MUFON conventions with her. We would take pictures of the sky. We're always, talking about aliens. And so UFOs was like a very big part of my childhood, which I never understood that quite growing up until I kind of came into this work that I do now. And I was very much involved with my careers in 9 to 5. I'll just call it the work matrix, working, jobs. And they started just to not resonate with me anymore. Around 2015, 2016, I felt like this calling, that I was supposed to do something else with my life. I climbed pretty high on the corporate ladder, was a senior executive in the banking industry, when I stumbled across a video of Dolores Cannon. We'll talk maybe a little more about who she is and how she inspired me later on in the podcast. But I came across a Dolores Cannon video. And for those of you who know who she is or don't know, she was amazing. She passed away in 2014, but she was absolutely amazing. And on her videos, she was talking about aliens. She was talking about ancient Atlanteans, contacting the higher self, all of this stuff about the work that she's done. And I was absolutely fascinated. And I decided to find a practitioner and get a session done myself. And so I did. I actually drove down to LA because there was no practitioners in my area here in Las Vegas. And when I did my session, my subconscious, my higher self came forward to answer some questions about my life path and my purpose. And my subconscious told me that I was to be a practitioner. And so that was back in 2015. It took me a little while to get to where I am now. Actually, it took the pandemic being the catalyst for me to do this work full time. At the time the pandemic started, I was working in the banking industry, and I just remember just kind of daydreaming about doing this work full time. At the time, I was doing it on the weekends only, like here and there. I could get some sessions to help people. And I just took that leap. It became too much. I had a very large team, large staff. When the pandemic hit, it was chaos, and I decided to leave and do this work full time. So it's been 2 years now, and I'm helping people, loving what I do. QHHT is absolutely incredible modality of healing. I will say that it is Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say you are very enthusiastic about it,
Yeah.
which I picked up on. And it, when you talk about, and we'll continue in a moment, but when you
Hmm.
referenced earlier your subconscious, like speaking to
Yeah.
you, what is that? Like, what are you hearing?
Absolutely. So, with QHHT, what is so unique about this method, this modality of healing, is that Dolores Cannon developed a way through her hypnosis technique, which is proprietary to quantum healing hypnosis, QHHT, to contact the deepest part of the subconscious mind. And it is the part of us, the higher self, also called, the oversoul, subconscious, that it's a part of us that is connected to source. It is the all-knowing part of the subconscious mind.
So
So it
is that where
knows.
the quantum part comes into it?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
That is exactly where the quantum part comes in, because the higher self, which I'll call it probably the higher self, or subconscious throughout this conversation,
Mhm.
connected to source, and there is no time in that realm. I mean, time is quantum, and it's really bound here in the third dimension. But when we are talking to source, talking to the higher self, it doesn't have any concept of time. Everything is happening all at once, past, present, future. And part of the session, like when we are talking with the subconscious and asking questions, if like we ask for a timeline or anything time based, oftentimes it'll say, I don't know, or soon, or something like that, because it doesn't understand the concept of time.
The concept of time is irrelevant to the healing of the soul, because you're
Mhm.
dealing with aspects of the soul that could be what in the past and the future.
That is correct. From the information that I've gathered as a practitioner, is that everything is happening all at once, right? It's
Mhm.
like there's all these different timelines, dimensions, past, present, future, but it's all somehow simultaneously happening at the same time. So we have fragments of the soul that could be living the past life, the future life, the
Mhm.
present life, all at the same time simultaneously. And it's kind of hard for our minds to wrap around this concept. And this is just what I've gathered as a practitioner, and taking people through past life experiences and talking with the subconscious, and what I've gathered through my sessions. But to your point, yes, because time is quantum, it doesn't really have any bearing on the healing of the soul.
What does it feel like when you're talking to the subconscious? What indicates that that's what you're communicating with?
Mhm. And it's really easy actually for me to tell when I do fully have the subconscious. And sometimes the conscious mind likes to interfere sometimes. And so I can tell as a practitioner, because the subconscious higher self will refer to you in the third person, she, her, they. And so if when I'm having that conversation and my client is in trance, if they're referring to themselves in the third person, I very clearly know that I am talking to that part of them. Sometimes when the conscious mind interferes, it's very not very common. It's pretty not very frequent. But when that does happen, they will say stuff like "I don't know" or "I can't answer," and so that's easy for me to differentiate as the practitioner. And I
Hmm.
have techniques and things that I can do to get them, the subconscious to fully come forward and the conscious mind to take that back seat.
Is this related in any way to like the Jungian idea of like an archetype, where there's a kind of cultural memory that humans have deep within their subconscious, or is it much bigger than that?
I would say that it is, it is much bigger than that. Yeah, I would say that it is much bigger than that.
And where what's the source? Do you have any sense doing this practicing?
Yeah, source is the all-knowing. It's that part of us that we're all connected to, that has all information about our life, lifetimes that that we're living now, previous lifetimes, future information. it is the part that's connected to us that can, you know, scan the body and tell us right away what's going on in the body. It's the all-knowing. It's basically, you know, how I would define source.
Mm-hmm. And since you're a dog owner, you know, is there like a way to use this technique via the human to connect with pets? Does that sound too weird?
Yeah. No, actually, we do that all the time. I did that with a client just last week, where his dog was experiencing some pain, and we can do a surrogate session where the higher self of the client, we do a special meditation during the session that connects them to the higher self of the animal. And the animal will come forward, and I can communicate. We can ask it questions. It's actually pretty common, and we get a lot of very good information that comes through about that. So
How do we know it's not like just our subconscious mind creating a story or a narrative, you know, based on our own psychology, which is real, but
right.
then kind of a self therapy that it's creating, and not really like a cosmic you know, energy, like the field or the force or something like that.
I would say validation. I've had several clients where pertaining to like animals, since that's what we're talking about, where we will do a session and we connect to the animal, and they will take the animal to the vet after. And for instance, I had a client, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with the dog. The dog had a lot of tests and things that were run, and the vet didn't really know what was going on. The dog ended up having an infection like in the right paw. And that came through in the session. And about a week later, she contacts me and says that they actually found out the dog had like cancer, and it was like growing, you know, it was in the paw. And had that not come through in the session, they really wouldn't have known like where to scan, where to look. And so those types of stories, I get feedback all the time from clients contacting me like, you know, a week later, a month later, saying, oh my gosh, your session was so profound, like this happened or this came up. And so definitely validation. And that's what keeps me going, and how I know in my heart that, you know, this work is, it, you know, it's valid, it works, it's true. And it's not just, you know, to your point, like the subconscious, just kind of, you know, just saying that, you know, for the sake of the session.
Have you done well, I guess you keep records of your sessions, right? Like,
Yes.
or have you kept record of like the number of like validations per person to kind of give yourself a sense at least of, you know, of how well it's working? Like, is there like an accuracy rate? Like, obviously if it was like 80% accurate, then it's not chance, right? Then there's something really going on here, versus like 90, it would be like, you know, mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, statistically speaking, I don't keep like I don't keep statistics where I track like everything like that. I would say just mostly like the change and the feedback that I get from my clients.
Is
I have
100% probably.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
I have a client who messaged me a couple weeks ago. She's like, I am absolutely not the same person that I was when I stepped through your door.
Yeah.
My life has completely changed, and that change would not have happened if I wouldn't have come forward for a session. I've also had a client who had glasses, and you know, we went into the session and during the session, they asked if the subconscious could heal their sight, and they left the glasses. And I, you know, contacted them. I'm like, hey, you left your glasses. They're like, I don't need them anymore. And they never contacted me back. I did keep them, but they never
Wow.
contacted me back. So yeah, and I have tons of stories like that. Where the subconscious is very powerful. Now, I will say, Alan, that the belief system has to align. The client, if they don't believe, we're going to find out real quick in session. So the belief system definitely has to align with the healing in order for that healing to truly occur.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unknown that there are cases where people have seemingly miraculously healed, whether it's, you know, from a disease or an injury or you know, an infection, and you know, doctors are dumbfounded. They just don't. It's just the exception to the rule for whatever reason. And then we also know that placebo effect is a very real effect. So I suppose that if there's some kind of healing like that, a placebo effect is the effect of the subconscious. So could we do you think there's a future where this kind of or similar technique would actually be used in hospitals or in patient care as a true medical technique?
It's actually so funny that you mentioned that. I just met with a nurse yesterday. um, she works in hospice care, and we were meeting with her yesterday. She's like, I absolutely 100% believe in this work. I've been working in hospice care for 30 years. And the stories that I have, and the things that I've seen, I know how powerful the subconscious is. And I see people pass over to the other side all the time. She's like, I would love for you to come, and do some sessions, with my patients. And so we were chatting about that. So I would say absolutely. I even have a friend who's a nurse, and she's going to come for a session. And so healthcare professionals, people who have been in the industry, they actually are very much on board with this type of work. And I think that they would know firsthand the most. I mean, they're in, day and out working with people, seeing people pass, helping people to heal. And that's also another form of validation for me. When somebody who with a medical degree or who works in the industry supports my work and believes in it as well. Yeah, it's definitely a form of validation, I would say too.
So, okay, let's just say hypothetically, like somebody was sick in her hospital. Like what does she imagine? Like, is the process would be, or for what do you imagine the process would be, to help them, heal?
Absolutely. Well, I will say this, that everyone has their life path. And so if I was to work on a patient, in the hospital, maybe I should also back up and kind of walk through the steps and what happens behind the scenes of
good
the
idea.
session. Yeah. So first we start with a QHHT session, several parts to the session. I'll sit down and talk with the client. And honestly, that's healing in its own, just to have somebody to talk to. Usually the interview phase, I want to know everything about my client. I always tell my clients, come ready to open up, to talk to me, to tell me everything. Because the more that I know about your life experiences, what's brought you to this point, who you are, what has shaped you, the more that I can help you. And also the more comfortable your subconscious mind is going to feel coming forward and talking to me, while under hypnosis. And so we'll talk for about an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours prior to the session. And then the first part of the session, after I regress a client, we will go to a past life. I would honestly say that that's probably the part where the most trauma seems to be released. Even just today, I had a client where we released a ton of trauma from a previous life experience. And so we'll find out a lot of information that are linked to sickness, illness in the current life through the past life regression. And when we go through the death experience in a past life. So if somebody, for instance, as we're talking about maybe a patient in the hospital and they're ill or they're sick, there's a strong possibility or strong chance that whatever's making them sick or the reason why they're in the hospital could be linked to a previous life experience that would be uncovered during the session. After we do the past life regression part of the therapy, that's when we move past the death scene and I call forward the higher self, the subconscious, to come and have a conversation directly with me. I ask the subconscious to scan the body. So the subconscious mind at that point will scan the entire body from head to toe, tell me what it's finding, whether it's trauma, illness, sickness. And then I'm a root cause person, so I always dig in. I'm like, okay, what's the root cause of that? Is that from this lifetime, previous lifetime? Is it linked to a certain situation that happened in their childhood? When was this sickness or illness inserted in the body? Where is it held in the body? So I'll ask a lot of questions to identify that. I will say that there's times when the subconscious will very clearly say, no, I can't heal this person. This is their life path. This is what they signed on. This is part of their contract. They need to go through this experience, or it's not time yet. So that does happen sometimes if it's not time for the healing, or
is it because they have to deal with maybe trauma in this life first before they can do that? Or
I would say there could be a variety of reasons. It could be, yes, that they need to go through that trauma in order to learn a lesson, or because there's karma from a previous life experience. It could also be that that was part of the soul contract. The reason that they came here was to endure this experience. So there could be various reasons that the subconscious would say, no, I can't heal this person, or it could just simply be that it's not the time yet, that they need to keep going through that experience in order to learn this or that, and then they can heal in the future. I think you're on mute, Alan.
Did I click that? I'm sorry. What's thank you. What's the next step after that?
So after we do the body scan, then my favorite part of the session is when it's like a Q&A session with the subconscious. So clients will write down the most important questions that they have about their life. I would say the number one question that everyone wants to know is, what is my life purpose? So usually that's the number one on the top of the list. And I'll ask the subconscious. Subconscious will answer that. Their life purpose is, to do this, this, and this. Typically, the answer, I will say, Alan, is the same for everyone. The subconscious always says to help others. I mean, that is the number one answer to why we're all here, is to help others. There could be like a variety of questions that the client has, whether it's like, why did I pick this, life partner, or why did this happen to me as a child, or I've had asthma my whole life. Why am I having asthma? Or anything that the client could honestly think of or want to know that's important to them. I encourage them to write it down, and then I will ask the subconscious during the session.
Yeah, there's something about writing things down, isn't there? There's, I don't know what it is, but like I hear that, for all kinds of different, therapies, group therapy, individual therapy, spiritual therapy, like writing things down is so important.
Yeah. And the subconscious will reply back to me, and everything's recorded. I like to say that everything is audio recorded for the client so that they get to listen to the recording, because oftentimes they might, after the session, they might think that they remember most of it or all of it, but they never do. There's bits and pieces when they listen to the recording, they're like, oh my goodness, I don't remember that part. And so everything is recorded for them.
Yeah, I've been witness to a past life regression before that was recorded, and was able to watch the recording again afterwards, and it is clear that the person doesn't remember every detail, but in this case they remembered most of it, but it was kind of like being in a dream state. Is that what it feels like when you're doing your session, or?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad that you asked that question. So with hypnosis, the visualization is very different. It's not like the way we see each other now. So it's kind of like, it's a sense of knowing, just like how the type of car you drive. You can picture your car, the color, the make, the model, and it's just a sense that that is how, when we're doing the past life regression, that is kind of how the visualization comes forward. It's a sense of knowing, a sense of feeling, just pops into their head. And so the visualization, comes through the mind's eye through that way. And people, though, experience a lot of emotion during that, and emotion can't be faked. It's the one thing, and that's, again, another validation for me, is people, will laugh, they'll cry, they feel joy in the past life sessions. And so it is like a dream in the fact that they could quickly forget it when they wake up. And so in that aspect, yes.
And particularly, it's got to be more difficult to fake an emotion when you're under hypnosis, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Emotions really can't be faked. And that's what I always tell my clients is, remember the emotions that you felt and how much detail. Some clients will tell me, I'm amazed at the details. Like, I could see everything, like down to the buttons I was wearing on my clothes. And it's like, yeah, it's a memory, and it's like you're reliving that experience. And I absolutely love doing the past life regressions. I never know where I'm going to go. Like, when somebody comes through the door for a session, I was just like, where are we going to go today? I have some really cool stories and things. Yeah. And things that come forward that I'm just in awe every day.
Past lives, how far back do we go? Does the human soul go in terms of a past life?
I will say that it's different for everybody, Alan. The subconscious knows exactly what that person needs, and it will always bring them to an experience that they need to be uncovered in order to get the most of the session and the most
Mm-hmm.
healing. I, I go to interesting places. As I was telling you before we started, I have a lot of clients that regress to lifetimes on other planets. And what's really cool for me about that is I've had several clients regress to a planet where the sky is red. It's a very futuristic planet. There's flying cars. The technology is magnetic. And what's really cool is that they all say the same things. The description's the same. They tell me like about the house that they live in. It sounds very much the same. The way that the food is prepared is the same. The city is the same. And so these people, they don't know each other. My clients, nobody knows anybody, but when they are under regression and they regress to a place like this planet, and they have the same information and the facts, and I ask similar questions, and it always, the information lines up. So it's really cool,
So
to see the experiences.
This is a real place that the same place people are reporting. Do you think?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So I've had two different planets that have come forward. The most common one is the red planet, where the sky is red, and every client that I've had has regressed here will tell me the same thing, that the buildings are very tall, cylinder-like buildings, and that they're all connected, and that the entire city and everybody lives inside because they cannot go outside. The air.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, like, they all say that the air is not breathable, that it's toxic. So, but they all live inside of like this dome-like city, and that everything is magnetic, from like the cars, the transportation, and the food is very high tech. Some sort of like in the kitchen, the food just appears. So I don't know if it's like a machine or something that like prepares the food. I ask all the same questions. I eat vegetables and things like that. Like we get down to like the finest detail.
Yeah. What kind of vegetables?
They, they say green and yellow vegetables, and I'm like, okay, is that like a zucchini? And then they're like a squash-like vegetable, but they all say that they eat the same things, and yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess it would have to be something that is kind of robust and can survive maybe a colder or harsher climate. It sounds like Elon Musk's, future Mars, considering, he's got the tube system with, magnetic, propulsion for what is it called? The tube. I forget what that's called. I think, the loop. He called it the loop.
Yeah, I know what you're referring to.
Yeah. And then, of course, obviously his mission to Mars, he really wants to get there, and he wants to start settlements. And that's kind of what it would be. There would be like these, pods that like are dropped off and then built on top of each other. So I guess I wonder, if you're going into the future, how does looking at the future self help the what you're going through now?
And again, I know I said this a couple times, but I think it's really different for everybody. Sometimes the information and those lifetimes that we experience, one thing that is unique, Alan, that every client has said in common with going to this particular place, is that they live alone. With no family. So everyone has reported that they don't have any family, and majority of the time at the end of a life, when we go through the experience, I always ask, what was the purpose of bringing this experience forward today? And usually with those experiences at this place, they will say to show that it's okay to live alone, or that it's okay to be alone, and that I'm strong enough to do it. That seems to typically be the response from the subconscious when we go there to that particular lifetime. And again, the answer could be different for everybody. If we regress to a future lifetime, it could be showing them like a future with a family, for instance. And it could be to offer them comfort and knowing that, hey, you will have a family someday. Maybe you don't in this lifetime, but someday in the future you will. And so the response could be different, and the experience and reason that particular life scene comes forward could have different meaning for different people.
What is more common, getting a past life, experience where there was a trauma, and by going through that, alleviates, whatever anxiety or depression or physical ailment that you're having now, versus, healing a trauma in this lifetime? Does it, like, which one do you tend to see more often? Like dealing with something from the long past that's affecting you now, or something that is happening with, this lifetime that's affecting you?
I would say they're probably both about the same, to be quite honest. With the past life regression, sometimes the trauma that comes forward is a surprise. Like the person didn't even know that they were carrying it. I had a client the other day who was experiencing like pains in the stomach. And then when we regressed, she had been stabbed in a previous life. And it was actually right in the exact same spot where she was experiencing those pains. And so we were able to link that. And when we processed through the death experience, she's like, I feel it's so warm right there. And oftentimes they will report that they start to feel like feel something. And I always will tell them, you don't have to experience any physical pain, no physical sensations. Yeah. Let's just walk through, through this just as though you're observing a movie. And we figured out with her, in her specific situation, that the stomach pain that she was experiencing was linked to that. However, in the same session, when we were doing the body scan, there was also trauma that was there in the stomach region and area as well, from the situation that happened as a child, that she had honestly forgotten about. And after a session, she was like, I completely forgot about that. And it's amazing that my subconscious held that and remembered that, and that I was holding, it was anger. A lot of times in the stomach area, it'll be anger that they're holding on to.
When you're in this hypnotic state and you're kind of communicating with the higher self, it reminds me a little bit of reports of people who are in, other forms of altered consciousness. And that there's a kind of a presence that's there. Do you think that, whether it's through whatever ritual or through psychedelic use, meditation, when people get into these kind of altered states and they have this sense of a presence of some kind of other, is that other actually the higher self, or could they be experiencing some other entity or consciousness separate from their own?
And that's actually a good question, Alan. And I experienced both. Usually it is the person, it is their higher self that I am speaking with. However, sometimes they will channel like a spirit guide or a loved one or somebody who has passed. That is common, that they will want to come forward. This subconscious will say, their grandma is here. Their grandma wants to come forward. And I'm like, okay, let the grandma come forward. And oftentimes it's a message of love. Like, I'm watching over you. I'm here with you.
Okay.
And they'll have a message or something for somebody, and even the client or even somebody in the family, or a life advice. Sometimes a guide or a loved one will even come forward to answer questions and give them advice on the questions that we're asking. So that is common, and that does sometimes happen.
Yeah, it's like you're kind of giving them an assist to, to connect with the other side, rather than being a psychic medium, right? Like you're an intermediary, and kind of getting them to connect, which is really really interesting. That makes me more curious about QHHT because I got a lot of questions. Now, the presence of extraterrestrials, is that a real thing?
Absolutely.
Okay. And what have you learned? And what have you learned? What have you learned in your sessions?
Well, like I was saying earlier, I had a very interesting childhood, and I won't go into all of that. But UFOs was a big part of my childhood, and I hated it growing up, and I had no idea why my mom was putting me through this until I started coming into this work. And interesting enough, a lot of my clients who stumble across me or happen to find me, however, or sent to me, a lot of them are people who are alien abductees. I've had several clients with missing time, and they'll be like, I have several hours that are missing. I want to know what happened. and I'll regress them back. And sure enough, is an abduction. I could, elaborate more on that. Extraterrestrials are real. They're present. I experience it, all the time in my client sessions. I have had two or three clients who have stumbled across a lifetime where they were an extraterrestrial. I had a lady the other day that recalled, she looked down and she's like, I have a short gray body. I have 4 fingers. And she was shocked. After the session, she was like, did I say that? And I'm like, you did. It's on recording. So there's a lot of extraterrestrial encounters that I get with QHHT. And I really think my childhood really prepared me for that. So that and these people find me. They're sent to me or...
Yeah, and it's hypothesized that they or some beings of some sort may be actually living here, maybe deep within the oceans or on Earth, but in another dimension. What's your take on that?
I would not be surprised at all. I haven't had an experience with that. I would love for something to come through where somebody recalls, a lifetime like that. But absolutely, I would say 100%. I would believe that in a second. Yes.
Cool. Jennifer, if you can leave us with any thought that you wish, what would it be?
Just to know that we're here for a purpose, that we all signed up for this crazy human experience called life, and to experience it in all of its beauty and all the emotions that come with it, the ups, the downs, and just take comfort in knowing that you're here for a reason and here for a purpose. And if anybody's ever interested in a session, or they feel lost, a QHHT session will definitely, help give you some guidance and information, to help you on this life path.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. And the last and final question, really important question. Are dragons real?
I would say yes. Dragons are real. Yes.
All right.
Quote me on that.
That's it. We have come to the conclusion. I don't need to ask this question anymore. Jennifer says dragons are real.
They are real.
All right.
They're real.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. I appreciate it. If you want to find out more about Jennifer Mitchell, go to thesoulexperiences.com. And if you are a fan of this podcast and Coffee and UFOs, again, please consider subscribing on youtube.com/Mystic Lounge. I appreciate you. I thank you for your constant support. And until next time, everyone, live in the mystery.